You're right, folks, and welcome back. Cataclysm comes with a lot of updates and changes and all-round alterations to how things have worked in Classic up to this point. I've covered a fair number of them on the channel already, mainly the big neon sign type things that are near enough impossible to miss. You know, the ones that you should feel pretty much upon logging in. But there are also a host of much smaller, what you might call quality of life changes. So we're going to go over a few of those in this video. Let's start with flying then, shall we? Ever a contentious topic for WoW players. In Cataclysm, we will get Master Flying. In TBC and Wrath, 10% speed was reserved for a handful of mounts and was not a skill in and of itself. All you needed to do was learn 280% speed, and should you get lucky on a certain drop or complete a glory achievement or what have you, you would get a little extra kick, usually from some very visually impressive mounts, your Ashes of Alar, Gladiator mounts, etc, etc. In Cataclysm, it is very much its own thing that you can purchase from any flying trainer for a fairly moderate fee of 5,000 gold at level 80 or higher. Of course, this will be reduced with any relevant rep bonuses and whatnot. This version of Master Flying is applied to all of your flying mounts, so even your little snowy griffin can keep pace with the big boys on their Ulduar Proto-Drakes. Now, here's the thing. In the original Wrath to Cata transition, anyone who previously had a 310% speed mount, be that Ashes, a Glory Drake, Mimiron's Head, or even Invincible, was given Master Flying for that character for free. And that is kind of the crucial word here. Character, not account. However, since we have account-wide mounts in Wrath this time round, as long as the character you're playing has Artisan Flying, you can use the super sexy fast mounts that you got on your main on your alts. So in my opinion, that really leaves us with two options when we get to the Cata pre-patch later this year. Either they just grant any character on your account who can use a 310% mount Master Flying, and this is the more friendly option, as it means you won't have to go and fork out potentially tens of thousands of gold just to get the extra 30%, or they will change the criteria for how it works per character. Maybe something along the lines of, this is the character that has the achievement, so they get the free upgrade. And this would work for all kinds of 310% mounts, because even the drop ones grant an achievement when you add them to your collection. I'd personally prefer the former. It would be a bit tedious to have to spend all that gold again just to get back to the exact same state I'm in now in Wrath, but we shall see. Either way, what this does mean is that you're not restricted to only a handful of mounts being considered useful. Should you be a Nether Drake enthusiast, for example, with this addition you can finally make use of them again, which is pretty neat. So let's move on then. Ammunition, and I'll bundle soul shards in here as well. From vanilla to Wrath, ranged weapons required ammunition, arrows for bows and crossbows, and bullets for guns. In Cata, these items are no longer required, and any lying around in your bags will just be converted into grey vendor trash, as they cannot be used even if you wanted to. They are now defunct, and ranged weapons just work. I'm in two minds about this, I always have been. As I've said before, I played a hunter back in the day, and even then the loss of ammo was a conflicting thing. I liked it then, I like it now. It's part of the fantasy of playing a hunter for me. But before you string me up, I can appreciate that it can be a pain in the neck, and if you aren't on top of your ammo and you just forget to restock, running out in the middle of a raid just isn't great, and it does create unnecessary friction. This also means warriors and rogues don't need to haul ammo around either for their little stat sticks. And then there's soul shards. They are technically still in the game in Cata, but it's not the same thing. Instead of being an item, essentially warlock ammo that you carry around in your bags to perform certain spells and abilities, they are now just combo points that spent an evening with the Addams family. So any non-combat abilities that utilize soul shards, your summoning portal, soul will, etc., just don't anymore. You click and voila. You might also be wondering what happens to quivers and soul bags then. Well, quivers become unobtainable items, but if you've already got one, it'll get converted into an ordinary bog standard bag. However, quivers and soul bags generally have a higher carrying capacity because they can only carry that one thing, as it's their sole purpose. However, when they get converted to normal bags, they do go through a minor downsize. In Wrath, at the moment, the largest quiver and ammo pouches are 28 slots. When the pre-patch hits, they will go down to a 20-slot bag, with the largest soul bag, currently a 32-slot, becoming a 22-slot normal bag. And because that's a tailoring item, it just becomes a rare quality bag that you can cook up and use on any character. And unlike quivers and ammo pouches, it doesn't become some sort of relic of the past owned only by those sentimental enough to keep them. And speaking of things that go the way of the dodo in Cataclysm, weapon skills. Now, if you played Classic at any point up to now, you will be very familiar with this little side activity. If for some reason you aren't, the basics are you need to level your weapon skills in order to use them effectively. If you've never, say, used two-handed maces and at level 80 get one, you're gonna go and have to swing that mace at some poor cretin in the open world until you're actually connecting with things your level. Depending on who you are, this is either a pretty neat little thing, part of the experience, nice flavour and all that, or it's the devil in numerical form. But it no longer matters, as with the pre-patch, weapon skills will be a thing of classic past, and regardless of whether or not you've used the class or weapon before, you can just throw it on yourself and go. Much like the ammo mentioned earlier, it's one of those things that just removes friction, because if you haven't got the time to go and auto-attack a random mob for however long it takes to level your new shiny, you're gonna be a bit screwed. Now you just gem it, enchant it, reforge it, whatever, and go. If you're a classic player, whether or not you notice this depends really. I know I haven't paid attention to it since the start of Wrath, with one exception. But if you've played from the start and have leveled many ults, it has probably been one of those background processes in your brain for the last few years. And if you're coming into Classic for the first time with Cata, then you just won't know the pain and suffering that is getting a lovely new stabbing stick, only to realise you have exactly 1 out of 400 skill points in the damn thing. The auction house is also going to see some changes. Blizzard call it streamlining. If you've not played retail in a while, you may not know that the auction house over there got a hell of a facelift. And personally, I was never fond. I just couldn't quite get used to it. But then again, I don't really frequent retail all that much these days. It will probably be a bit of a culture shock for Classic-only players, because it is one of those things that has been a constant for the last 20 years with the most minor of updates and tweaks. But with that being said, whilst I don't get on with it at the moment, I reckon those of you who play the auction house more frequently may find it to be more to your liking, as things like undercutting and having to repeatedly go back and forth, listing and delisting items just so they sell, is less of a thing in my admittedly limited experience with the updated version. It also comes with a few bells and whistles that generally make auction house usage a bit friendlier. If you've been playing Classic or just WoW for a long time, you will be very familiar with auction house scammers. You know the ones. The people who list a popular item on the auction house with a very low bid price, but the buyout is something like 5 grand for a very common crafting material like Borean leather. So it gets buried in the mix, and someone absent-mindedly buying multiple of them ends up buying the hideously overpriced version and wasting several thousand gold. That's not really possible in the retail/updated auction house, because if you were to try and buy something, it automatically defaults to the cheapest on the market. So someone trying to snag an easy 5-10 grand is more likely to just be forgotten about. And this is kind of what encourages people to not undercut as well, because if you list your item for the exact same price as the current lowest, you'll just be in the pile for automatic buyout, so you will still get your gold. I'm sure the folk hunting the smallest of margins on the market will still be doing fiddly bits and pieces, but it should make it a less daunting place in theory for new and inexperienced auction house attendees. Like I said, I reckon it'll be a bit of a culture shock for some people. If you play retail and classic, you should be fine. But if you are more classically inclined, shall we say, it might take a week or two to adjust. But yeah, it's a very modern interpretation of WoW's auction house system with modern UI elements and whatnot, so that alone might just fry a few brains when the pre-patch hits. If you want to go acclimate beforehand, just load up retail and go have a fiddle. And in fairness, you might argue this is a big change. Maybe again, if you're an auction house goblin, it is, but yeah, it's not really going to affect how your class plays or how a raid's mechanics work or anything like that. It's purely an update to one of WoW's most unchanged systems, and like anything that has been near enough the same for 2 decades, it'll just take some getting used to. But as with the auction house now, once you're used to how it works, you'll be grand and things will continue as they otherwise would have. And to finish for today, spell alerts. They're baked into the game now. If you don't know what spell alerts are, it's the light show that appears when you get a proc. It's a Cataclysm thing. Now, most raiders probably use a weak aura or other add-on for this sort of thing anyway, and I'm sure a lot will continue doing so going into Cataclysm because weak auras can track more than just a simple spell proc. But as an example, 2 things I've got a weak aura for on my DK are Freezing Fog and Killing Machine. And what I use now is actually not that far removed from what Blizzard set up in Cataclysm. So I could just roll with that if I wanted. And I said it's a light show. Yeah, it really is. What does that mean then? Well, it's quite simple and very in your face. In the center of your screen, you will get a graphic indicating that something has happened with a little sound effect. And if the spell that has procced is on your bars, which hopefully it is, it'll get a little ring light up around it. Now, this doesn't mean you have to press it, just that it's been modified or activated in some way. Now, I have a little nagging feeling in the back of my mind that there will be people out there, as there always are with this game, who go, "Oh, that's really bad, it dumbs down the game and tells people what they should be pressing instead of them learning how to play their class." So I want to address that sort of thought process here and now. It dumbs down nothing. Veteran players who raid, PvP, and in retail push Mythic Plus have been using weak auras and other add-ons since the dawn of time to help with their rotation, track cooldowns, trinkets, and just generally maximize their output. It's why spell alerts were put into the game in the first place. It is such a widely utilized form of player aid. Much like quest add-ons, it only made sense for Blizzard to implement it into the game themselves at some point. It doesn't force players to press the shiny button that has suddenly lit up, but it will tell a player in the heat of combat that something has changed, and it will direct them to that change clearly and concisely. For a new player, this is really good because it's something, if turned on, that will teach them about procs from a much earlier level and get them to a state where they are more familiar with them and able to utilize them more effectively if they ever decide to partake in endgame content. So how do you turn it on then? Well, in times past it was in the combat section of the interface menu. Said interface UI was updated in Wrath, so as to a specific place, I can't really say at this time, but I imagine it'll be something similar. It's a fairly simple thing, and again, if you are a new player and haven't quite dived headfirst into the eldritch realm that is add-on usage for WoW, it might just help show you when something interesting happens, and because it's a built-in feature, chances of something exploding are in fact significantly smaller, though I fear that gives too much credit to our overlords. Anyway, that's me for today, folks. I'd just like to say, in video form, thank you very much for the 1k. Honestly, meant the world to see that, and hopefully we can continue to grow things. I'm rather enjoying this whole shebang, and I hope to God you are too. So, let me know your own thoughts down below. Be so kind as to like, sub, share your pals, and so on. That'll be grand. Have a good one, folks. Bye for now.